Welcome everybody to Kevin, the Great Witness, the new adventure series. The new adventure series is. Thank you everybody for being here. Yeah, thanks Jeremy, and especially you, Kevin. You're the star here at Star Witness, and you're going to be sharing some of your experiences with us, and then we comment on them and give our views too. But thank you for doing all this and all the time you spent with it on the real side and here. Thank you for everything that you're doing, and we really appreciate it. You're giving us objective views here for everybody to benefit from. So appreciate you. And thanks Jeremy for being here as a co-host and commentator. So I'll give it to you, Kevin.
This real side experience would begin with me in the company of my sister, Lindsay. Her interest in becoming more aware waxes and wanes. She is rather one who is mainly immersed in her personal life. Her personal self, expressing little interest on the physical, for all real references, is related. Although she is fully accepting of the reality of reincarnation and the assumption of new body types and endless lifetimes in creation, she accepts readily that these body types are just vehicles, and our true essence inhabits them, our real awareness. I always would explain to her that what is being offered by the real guides and life is a choice and option, and although to stand in the true reality with the real guides, in recognition of it, is the real purpose, if she wants to remain in the struggle of the simulation, that is her choice to make. And as recent real side experiences have revealed, even as we keep the door open, as it were, for individuals into our experiences who may come around to deciding to become more aware, we must be wary of agreements and attachments to the ideas these individuals represent, for we can be tap-lined through these agreements, and by others tap-lining us through them, if we don't see these individuals and all of creation for what it is, a simulation comprising of ideas that are just references, and unless we want to be the effects of them, we ought not incorporate them, cling onto them, agree with them, and make them a simulated reality. On the real side, however, she seems more inclined to listen, as I am on occasion engaging with her real awareness, beyond the simulation of her personal self-consciousness, and all the attitudes, convictions, considerations, assumptions, and ideas that make up its construction. On this occasion, she informed me that I was to have an audience with someone of importance, and it was necessary for me to look very presentable. I had to rendezvous with another woman, and Lindsay, my sister, was my designated driver, and would drive me to meet this other individual in a very expensive-looking car. The cars are just ideas and attitudes that when we are within them on the real side, we are then utilizing these ideas and attitudes for whatever reason we are. a decided idea, a vehicle to effect an experience, or as a demonstration of an idea or attitude we might need to be addressing. If we are being driven, however, we rather are extending agreement to others, and we ought pay attention to who we are allowing to drive us and the nature of the vehicle, which will indicate the intent and ideas of our drivers. My impressions were that on this rare occasion Lindsay had simply agreed to take me to a certain location. It was even possible that this may not even have been my sister, as real guides can and do assume the forms of family members. When Lindsay stopped the car, the woman I was to meet was waiting, and she presented me with very expensive and elaborate clothing to wear. As I couldn't meet this significant person with what I had on currently, so I changed my attire, wearing the far more expensive clothes, instead of my usual shabby t-shirt and shorts. Seemingly satisfied, this woman would escort me to my destination, and I bid Lindsay farewell. With clothes representing ideas, broadly speaking, it seemed as though the ideas my previous clothing represented were not aligning sufficiently the personal self with the real intent, and on other real side experiences shared by others, occasionally gatherings of the aware and the new friends present as ballroom settings, or in other expensive-looking grand environments, with the equally as elaborate and fine clothing worn by all, rather indicating the refinement of ideas through the personal self, attitudes that must align more with the real intent of the real awareness, all of which are still ideas, and no ideas or attitudes will you see through the demonstration of the sun as the best reference that represents this isness beingness. But the attitudes of sincerity, purity, gratitude, and honor are those that, if embraced, will have the personal self better aligned with the real awareness and real purpose of is recognition, and this is demonstrated with the occasional real side experience of grand settings and exquisite attire, as though giving us a view of if we are indeed aligning the personal self with the gratitude and sincerity attitudes, or if we find our clothing is shabby in such situations, indicating we need then address more the ideas and attitudes the personal self is clinging to that are in not any way beneficial with the whole of life. So at this moment I was very much made aware of the ideas or attitudes I needed to refine, as the woman who met me, very likely a guide, would suggest a readdressing of these ideas, which was my decision to make, but evidently I was willing to do so, as I dressed in the fine clothes she offered. The expensive car also may be a demonstration along these lines, as much as the quality of the clothing we wear indicates the purer personal attitudes we ought embrace, with the cars also representing ideas and attitudes. A finer car can represent then a finer attitude that makes more sense and aligns the personal self with our real awareness intent. So perhaps Lindsay was a real guide after all, and the car was the initial hint that a little refinement of my personal self needed to be made, for to remain with the limited attitudes and ideas of a personal self would be our decision to do so, but would limit us from the experiences we need to become more aware by, as the real guides and life simply can't get through the encasement of the personal self, if that is what we choose to be immersed in. We arrived at a very elaborate castle. We entered a courtyard, walking by sentries that were positioned along the walls. They were dressed in medieval armour, and a few spoke to me as we passed them. They had a strange dialogue and accent that seemed familiar, but my personal self couldn't place it. It was an entirely alien language that nowhere on earth would you find, although the guide I was accompanying would speak English, and as a guide she would of course be able to speak whatever language was required according to the individual she was speaking with, based on what language the individual had assumed in their current personal self lifetime in creation. We came to an open area, the setting looking very much like where you would house a council meeting perhaps, an arrangement of chairs, and overlooking the area would be a singular high-backed chair, the sort you might expect a royal dignitary to sit upon and oversee what took place here. There was a man who would enter and seat himself on this chair, who evidently was the person of significance I was supposed to meet, and he very much presented as a king. He had a very strong awareness, sense of a real purpose and intent about him. The idea seemed to be that I was to prove myself, and take a position at his side, and with my impressions that this man was another very aware being, I agreed to prove my worth, and to see what would come of it. There were 4 other potentials for this position, and we were put through many trials and tests. As this aware being watched on, I would emerge victorious. The other 3 found wanting, and so I assumed the position we had all been offered, but one for which we had to prove ourselves to acquire. At the time of the sharing of this experience, Duane would see that the aware man I had an audience with was himself, and that as we continue with our process of awareness, Duane and the real guides will offer opportunities for stepping up further, to take on more responsibility, and if we agree, we will be more effective in assisting others to become more aware also, as our greater positions and standing in life consequently will allow us to reach more individuals, take more on, and in turn we become even more aware and earn our way to ultimately recognize the ease, as everything equals itself. The degree to which we support life and the real awareness we all are, the more we are supported and earn our awareness. The demonstration here was that a small group were offered this particular opportunity, whatever it may have been, and there are endless opportunities to earn the way and become more aware through. Everybody is given every chance and can decide in what way they will step up and participate. We rather earn our opportunities to become more aware through our intent, but to continue on requires a steady focus and a maintenance of this real intent, and through the personal self also. Perhaps here these other individuals, whoever they were not quite suitable for this particular position. Not that anybody is any better or worse than any other. We are all these free beings of equal light, but what separates us is the decisions we make, the focus we have, the adventure we decide. And so when it came to it, these four simply decided they would not take on this particular opportunity being offered. Interestingly, here would also be my first glimpse of what would become a fairly consistent feature of real side experiences to come, the prospect of assuming new and more robust body forms. For as we are to continue on and sharing as we do on the physical level, the stresses of environmental pollution and various factors weigh heavy on the fragile human body form, and so it seems as though the opportunity to take on more resilient and resistant body vehicles is being offered for those who are sincere with their awareness process and the continued promoting of the ears and the real guides. We must agree naturally, as is always the case, it isn't an imposition, but it makes sense, especially as the possibility of assuming more resilient robotic body types are being made an option, and a robot body is no different from any other vehicle. Our real awareness is simply using it to operate in creation, and a far more sturdy and robust body type it would be. The dark forces also want to robotize humanity, but the difference is the dark forces' robotic vehicles will not be simply that, vehicles for operating in creation through. The robotized masses will be controlled through their mechanized vehicles if agreement overall allows this agenda and dark force idea to be so. And so, here in this real side experience, I would now lay upon a table, technology would come to bear, and I was converted into a kind of cyborg, a half-human, half-machine, and there would be my first experience of the future potential assumption of a more resilient body vehicle.
I like the way you break things down all the time. It's really important to do this because life is always showing us and presenting and demonstrating to us certain opportunities for us to wake up to. And that's why we have this show, so we can kind of go through these experiences and people have an opportunity to see what they're being shown. You have a viewpoint and others have their own viewpoints, but it's very important to pick up and figure out what's being shown, because life is always showing us something. That's why we do the movie review show. We have this movie real to real wake up, because it's showing us too what the controllers are doing. Their intent is different than what you're talking about here, because the intent behind your experiences is for the benefit, whereas the movies are normally for the benefit of the controllers and what they're trying to program into us. But this is very good how you explain things, because people aren't used to they take things for granted so much that things become boring, and life is an adventure, and it's always on. It's always showing us something every moment. So it's key to trying to figure it out. You can't really do it with your mind, but you can do it with just seeing what's being shown to you, and recognizing it, and seeing how you can be more. So thank you for that. Yeah, enjoyed that. If you'd like to add something to that, or go ahead with the next experience. Thank you.
The overall of the galactic endeavor is a huge creational wake-up on the physical and on the real side of life. The simulator is in great peril, as the agreements through the overall consciousness have reached a level of constricting control distortion that is reflected as the simulator in a downward spiral to demise. The consciousness affects the simulator as the two are intertwined. The consciousness is the simulator, in other words. Agreements through the consciousness is reflected through cause to effect into experience, and the experience mirrors that which is being decided and agreed upon, with agreements and decisions overwhelmingly not making sense with the whole of life, with agreements that are to control and restriction, and increasingly so overwhelmingly. So does the simulator go through its cycles of deterioration, from what is referred to as golden, through to where we are now, the Iron Epoch, and ultimately implosion is inevitable, as agreement to a continued restriction molds the consciousness to effect a simulator that eventually collapses in on itself. As such, the only way to offset this situation is through real awareness. The more aware we become, the more we stand in the new nowness of the real awareness, as we recognize how to do and be this. That is the isness true reality, aside from creation. As such, we retract agreement from the consciousness of the construction of a personal self that is programmed with agreements to contribute through the effects generated to this simulator demise. The idea then is to approach all individuals, in all the various body forms they have, from one end of creation to the other on the real side, to extend to them the opportunity of becoming more aware, to share and promote the real solution to the simulator situation, and that they can save themselves also from being caught in the effects of it. The real side far easier to do this by virtue of how many individuals we can reach, and how far we can travel, literally speaking, as our awareness is at liberty to be wherever it makes most sense to place it, as we share the real references of the is, and through the timelessness isness of our real awareness, We could in fact approach every individual simultaneously in a single new moment, and then the personal self gets shown all of which we have decided. That may span weeks and months of real side experiences. Whereas, absent of approaching individuals on the real side, we would be somewhat limited on the physical level, resigned as we are to a single planet. And generally, the real awareness of the individuals are more agreeable to stepping up and assisting in offsetting the simulator situation. Then it's rather the case of if it will filter through to the personal selves of these individuals on the physical level, and that they follow through with what their real awareness decides. This real side experience was one such example of approaching beings that we might secure their agreement to step up, and that they may decide to become more aware. There was a large conference building, and it was full of individuals, all making their respective ways to a main hall, where a presentation was to be made. The vast majority of these individuals were various types, species, and body forms that were very alien in appearance in comparison to the human body vehicle, but among these were beings that more closely resembled human body types, and some were humans in fact, as far as one could tell. They would segregate themselves according to their species, and there was little cross-species interaction that I could see, as is quite typical with species. As always, there is suspicion of those not of their own kind. What differentiated each group of aliens was not only their appearances, but the coloration of the robes they were wearing. The colours ranged from purples to blues to greens. The colour of the robes seemed to denote their level of psychic ability, their creational and manipulating capabilities, and their intelligence, all weaved in together, as was the impression I had. As many alien species do boast extraordinary mental abilities, telepathy, mind-reading, and psychic manipulating talents through the utilizing of the ethereal body. It seemed that the species of alien present here that topped the creational pecking order in regards to these qualities were a very tall group of aliens, with the pear-shaped typical heads of grey aliens with large almond eyes. The only feature out of the ordinary was their height, as greys tend to be quite diminutive, and these were a good 8 to 10 feet tall by my estimation. The coloration of the robes they wore were black. Generally, then, we had a number of species, the colour of their robes signifying their creational-based personal self-capabilities. But despite the way we have decided our created personal selves to be, as what we are, our body types are always that which we have decided through the various choices we have made. Any body type, or its mental ethereal abilities, has nothing to do with the real awareness and the isness that the real awareness is a part of, that which animates the created vehicles. And just because an alien species may have incredible abilities doesn't mean they are any more aware than, say, the average human. The aliens will still have their attitudes, ideas, and personal self-serving drives and agendas, and generally the personal self of any individual does very little that makes sense with the whole of life, that supports the real awareness that they really are. The aliens here would also have agreements to control, through their created consciousness, personal selves that are also effecting simulator deterioration. The black-robed individuals, the tall greys, though of a far greater standing than the others, through the abilities they had, were perhaps affiliated with the reptilians, as the greys do have an association with the reptilian species, and many of them work with the reptilians in the controlling of the humans, through the agreements trolled for their restricting slavery systems. The tall greys also exuded a kind of arrogance, a self-convinced attitude of superiority over all the other various groups of different coloured, robe-wearing aliens. I would suggest that due to their decided consciousness, and with the attitudes they embraced, they may have been the most unconscious and unaware of all the other species here, despite their superior personal self-skills, as the black of their robes did suggest unconsciousness, as that is what this colour can represent on the real side. I was walking among all these alien groups, and these tall, black-robed greys would also sneer down at me, but undaunted I proceeded, was joined by two other individuals that my personal self didn't recognise, but my real awareness did, very likely two other new friends, accompanying me on this experience. Despite some of the aliens maybe having their attitudes, they still all filed into this main hall, including the black-robed tall greys. So all were seemingly prepared to at least listen to what was to be presented. And although this is where the experience would end, I had the impression that it was Duane who would take to the main staging area before this packed hall of aliens. He would undoubtedly address all gathered here and attempt to present them all with the opportunity of becoming more aware, give them the option, consequently, to supersede their situations in a rapidly collapsing simulator, and gain agreements to assist the real guides with the situations taking place throughout creation, as many planets, such as the Earth, are in grave peril also from being unnecessarily destroyed.
Thank you, Kevin. Jeremy?
Yes, just a quick comment, because you do a thorough job of explaining that. I have my own encounters with individuals wearing black. They moved in like that robotized manner. Generally, they take on like Mr. Smith type looking characters like from the Matrix. But yeah, that's very interesting that their social system was organized according to their psychic abilities of how much distortion they could cause. That's pretty interesting.
We just watched a movie called Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets. Have you seen that, any of you? Yeah, it's 2017. Ethan Hawke's in there, cameo role, but it portrays the modern 2017, not too long ago, but a lot of alien body types. It's very interesting what they came up with. I mean, it's a you know, we have Star Wars and the bar scenes and stuff, but this is like the new version of the new body types. Very interesting, just to see them as they come into the movie and they shake the hands of these the human types, but each of them have different body types basically. But yeah, it's creation is huge. There's a lot to be done here, and we have plenty of opportunities to wake people up. We can be very creative with it. And again, Kevin's getting the experience that how we can have our adventures on the real side and meet people and have experiences with other body types and who want to wake up. Just given the opportunity, they have that chance. It's a huge journey. And the more we present this and give others opportunity, the more we wake up, and all life wakes up at the same time. It's neat the way it works. So Duane's always, he's basically the main guy. So he's behind it all, as well as the real guides in terms of all these experiences on the real side that we have, watching and doing what, when it's their time to do something, they come in and do it, get it done. But we set things up. They need us too to set things up, to be the scouts, and to make connections, and then they can come in and do what they do. They can't do everything, you know. That's why the more of us there is, the more opportunities for everything, all life forms to wake up. Okay, Kevin.
This real side experience had me walking along a street, and I would come across a young boy, maybe in the age 8 to 10 range. He was laying in the road and appeared to have been mangled somehow, battered, bruised, and bloodied. The first thought would have been that he must have been struck by a car. I would lift him very carefully and place him on the sidewalk. He was unconscious the entire time. I was wanting to get help, but as it is on the physical level, I don't use cell phones, so never have one with me. And this was the same situation here on the real side. I lacked a cell phone to call for aid. I did see several people walking past and would request their assistance, but they seemed disinterested, ignoring my pleas, and some even pretended as though they couldn't hear me, although I knew that they could indeed hear my requests for help. Duane described in his new books how when he encountered the ears, it demonstrated itself in a form best expressing its purity, that of a young child, a little girl. I had the impression that a similar demonstration was occurring here, that I was encountering the ears expressing itself in this way, in the form of the purity that is expressed in the form of a child, but that it was also indicating how in a way it had been neglected and forgotten about by so many individuals that are in positions in life, in the simulators, but not standing real and in recognition of life itself, the true reality of the all is. That the essence of this isness, of being real, is a real survival and self-sufficiency, and real isness recognition is demonstrated as a supporting of the true reality through the standing real in our real awareness, being in the new nowness of it, and the promoting and sharing of it, of a true reality that supports each individual awareness in turn, but with such a disconnect on such a vast scale, with most people choosing to go with their personal lives. They continue to add cause and effect ideas that contribute to the demise of the all-natural environment, and an agreement to this demise that is programmed through all of their 5 creational bodies, and especially the unconscious parts, the subconscious body. The all-natural environment, that is the whole of life, is expressed throughout creation and into the real universes, and is the isness that supports us all. The idea then would be to stand real in the new nowness of the whole of life, this true reality of the is, that would have us no longer contributing factors to the demise of the all-natural environment, and so by that very decision to be standing real, we support the is, and are in a position that makes the most sense with the whole of life. For such a new nowness, being a real position, has us beyond cause and effect idea creations and agreements, which through the systems established here, and the controlled social consciousness, are distortions, and progressively cause worse conditions here on this planet. The is, the whole of life, is by and large disregarded, neglected, taken for granted and forgotten, almost abused in a way, much like how the real guides are abused and disregarded as they try to make themselves known in the awareness of everyone in creation. And the further demonstration in this experience was of the individuals passing by, quite clearly content with their personal lives, and to remain restricted in creation, satisfied and self-convinced, unaware of how they are participating in the demise of their creational, simulated training ground, through their choice to remain with their personal self, their agreements, attachments, and fear-based acquiescence to reptilian rep systems that are designed solely for control purposes, expressing no want or desire to support the true reality and recognize their real awareness, disregarding the abused and battered child in this experience that was representing the is, as I would attempt to get their attentions, but to no avail. Of course the is just is, and just like the sun shining, it wouldn't react or be concerned in any way by the choices and decisions that individuals make, as the is its own reality, and is indifferent to creation, absolute and complete, and is in no way affected by anything that is decided in the simulators, even if the simulators do implode, due to agreement and decision to cause and effect ideas of restriction and distortion.
Yeah, this little boy, he just he really didn't have a concern. He was just showing, as the is, showing what's going on with the people ignoring him and battering him, as well as the real guides. They're not paying attention. I have this friend, and she's a Christian friend, and we have long, interesting discussions about her her faith, and I give her my viewpoint. In her scenario, God comes down as Jesus, as the man, just like this little boy came down as the is, but her viewpoint, God comes down as Jesus. But look what her story is, where he has an attitude, or he's trying to gain or teach people that they have sin, that they've done something wrong, and that they need to reform, repent, and accept this story, basically. So see, her story is you have to do something. There's a catch to it. Whereas this little boy is he's just again demonstrating. He's a reference, impartial, indifferent to what people are deciding, but he's showing himself to us in every which way, like life does. But in the Christian viewpoint, well, you've done something wrong. There's something that is created beyond what just is, and whatever the story is, people accept it, and they miss out. They go past what just is apparent, that you have to recognize it. But it just is, like you say, they just it's an isness, and people don't. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around that, or their hearts, or their attention, their recognition. It just is, because they're so used to adding things, bring information, or adding ideas to what already is. But what is, and so it's better to back off and just let life show you, keep showing you things, instead of trying to figure it out with more information and more searching. Just see it for what it is. It's tough, but it's possible. The real guides have done it. So there are way showers. They can point the way. Somebody's done it. And it's not about the saviors and all that kind of thing. Those are just people that have gone a certain way, but they never saw the is. And now that we're here, we have the opportunity for them to come in. They have an opportunity to come back. If Jesus is going to come back, well, he can come back and, show people that there's more than what he said, if he's willing to do that, or has the recognition, he can help the Christians. So we're giving, these saviors a chance. We're giving the bad guys a chance. Everybody has a chance here. There's no discrimination. It's just about being real with what's going on. Jeremy, you have a point of view?
Well, I thought it was interesting where you mentioned about how you have conversations with a Christian friend of yours. I was sort of the latter. I have conversations with this Catholic friend of mine, and we go back and forth, not really just comparing viewpoints of, they try to make sense of what it is that I'm sharing. And I sort of tell them, no, it's not something that can be considered. And the more that you try to label it, identify it, put a creational idea to it that you think in your mind is it, then you're just hindering yourself, because it's not that. It's not anything that can be considered. And I wanted to mention also, because you mentioned the idea of sin. In the Bible, it always says that people are born into sin, which is the moon. It all goes back to these distorted systems of deity worship and all this other nonsense.
Yeah. It's too many add-ons. That's where we are with nature is already self-sufficient and complete. So these add-ons that we do to it, as well as the ideas of spiritual ideas, religious ideas, they're just really unnecessary. We don't need them. We're at a point now in the epoch here that we're in that we don't need them. And to survive it, to survive this epoch, we need to go beyond that. But who's going to do that? Not many people right now are seeing it, but there's always a chance. There's always an opportunity given. As long as we're here, people have the opportunity. Okay, Kevin, so that's great. That's good, great experiences. It's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. That's great. You have any last comments, words?
Well, a little like how we discussed in the previous show when we were talking about part of how they control people is not only to get their agreements to their control systems and their restricting ideas, but also to get them to take on the notions to agree with lack of self-worth, which makes the people more farmable and more likely to be in positions of servitude if they take on the personal self-consideration idea that they are worthless slaves and need to be controlled and regulated. And that would tie in a bit with the idea of sin, because again, if people take on that notion that they are sinners, it's another guilt psychological ploy, which again ties in with religion, that almost to alleviate your guilt, you've also, through the sin that you have, that you've also now got to be worship and grovel before a god, which of course is as all religions are reptilian created sacrificial systems, which will again have you trapped and tap blind in cause and effect creation. And obviously all the religions of the world, the gods that they bow and grovel and kneel to is none other than the Calorm reptilian god of the 4th level. So I think they'll be quite shocked to learn that they're the god that they've been worshipping all these years and centuries, and indeed since the human race began, is in fact a 20-foot triple-headed lizard reptilian. Yes.
Yeah, well, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so let's wrap it up. Thanks, Kevin, and everybody. And we usually sing the new you, so you're welcome to participate in that. This is our connection to something real. Watch your dreams. Sing new you and watch your dreams. What life will show you. New you. Charles?
New you.
Jeremy?
New you.
And Kevin?
You.
Thanks, everybody, for sharing, and see you next week.